to the Heel Turn podcast for the week of July the 22nd. I am your host, Big Al. Nick can't be with us this week. He has some family issues to work with. But with us, as always, is our technical producer, Sensational Sosie.
Hello.
Let's get things started right off at the top of the card. We have two interviews with two guys that one is a legend of the ring, the other is just starting out in the ring. At the top of the card, we have Marcus Buff Bagwell as our key interview, but we also have an interview with the son of Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, ladies and gentlemen, Cody Hall. So Sosie has a very special text interview with her legend in the
fanfic world.
Yes, fanfic world.
The legendary
Master Seton.
Although right now she goes by the name of, what is it? Retina Not Human. I have no idea what that means. I probably should have asked her that, but whatever.
Yeah, say la vie.
Whatever.
Well, let's kick things off with, I guess, your text interview.
All right, we'll just go straight into it. As I said on the last podcast, Master Seton is known throughout the fanfiction world as a great writer, and I was honored to do an interview with her. So we'll just go right into those questions. The first question that I asked her was, had she had any experience with plagiarism, being that she is one of the most viewed as far as her stories. Has she had issues with people stealing those stories and trying to make them her own? And she said she's actually had 3 experiences with plagiarism. And as a writer, she understands the damage that plagiarism can do to the inspiration of a writer and to the validity of the work in general. She goes on to say that it may be dramatic, but it feels like to her that someone has literally taken a piece of her soul away, which that's pretty deep for a writer. That lets you know how close she is to her writings. With each of the 3 experiences, she was shocked at how apathetic they were to the issue. One of the persons that plagiarized her material sent her private messages justifying stealing her work. And they were all related to her Seton stories, which we know is the pairing of John Cena and Randy Orton is what she's known for.
Ew.
Why ew?
Because Randy Orton just ew.
Oh, it's Randy Orton that we're hearing about. Okay, I'll take that. The second question I asked was, in some of the recent stories, haven't had the happiest of endings. Strong Hands and Bulletproof Skin both had, I think Strong Hands had Randy dying at the end, and Bulletproof Skin had John Cena. Not only was he had AIDS, but he also was murdered in the story, which is pretty hardcore.
By Brie Bella?
No, he was murdered in a gang shooting, which is like crazy.
Spoilers!
Like you're gonna read it.
Others might.
No, they won't. They probably have already read it. If they're listening to this, they've already read this story. And now you made me lose where I was. Okay, I asked her was she worried about the reaction of killing off characters that throughout the story she made people love, and were there ever thoughts of changing those endings before posting the chapters? And here was her response. Much of the destructive nature of my recent works is based on personal experiences with prejudicial readers and people I'm very close with as of late. Strong Hands tragedy was planned, but Bulletproof was not planned, and neither was Razor Blade Kiss. I'm not typically a destructive personality type, so these new changes to my stories have been as surprising to me as they are to my readers. I would not say I'm worried about reader reaction because it's very rare that anyone compliments the death of a character in my works except for Miss Kelly Kelly. She happens to be one of my favorites personally. The endings come to me in a very systematic way, and once it comes, it's basically impossible for me to change it. I have tried in the past to alter endings that I was not satisfied with, but it never works, which is why I have repeatedly deleted some of my stories. I overworked Bulletproof like crazy because I received so many conflicting reviews and opinions about it. I'm satisfied with the current result, yet I do believe my readers aren't. The next question that I had for her was, do you like to write the stories fully before posting or post them as you write them? And if you post them as you write, does the feedback you get have an effect on the progress and outcome of the story? Her response to that was that she always posts as she writes. Me personally, I am scared to do that, but she does. And
that's a good way to write yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
And people see that, and they're like, ooh.
But see, that's why she's Master Seton, because she can do that. Me, I would be terrible at it. Her, she rocks. I want to say that feedback doesn't account for the story,
Man,
but it does.
You're putting her over better than Paul Heyman.
She's good, man. You don't read fan fiction, so you don't know. She rocks. The reason I hesitate to say this is because there are readers who take full advantage of this and use reviews to submit numerous ideas about what they would like to read. This is highly annoying. It is. It's really, really annoying habit when done to excess, which is usually the case. I once had a reader that got so obsessive about idea submissions that she sent me several messages daily and even began referring to my story as hers, even though she contributed nothing but the initial idea. I take reader feedback as part of my process. There are times where I've completely altered or even deleted a story because readers have driven me to hate some of my work because it reminds me of them. That is hardcore. This story reminds me of you. Delete. 4 months of work. Delete. She's hardcore.
Right.
So I went on to ask her if she had any advice for up-and-coming fan fiction writers. So if you're wanting to write fan fiction, listen closely. This is for you from the master. I've mentioned a few new writers in wrestling fan fiction communities. I always tell them to take reviews with a grain of salt because I don't want them to be overwhelmed by the response they get. My first work on fan fiction was so hated that fanfic admin deleted the story, and I thought I would never write fan fiction again. Thankfully, I did come back, and I worked hard to become successful, though it takes time, and I remind new writers, that it requires work to build a fan base. But it's worth the effort. I also tell new members to pace themselves. Some of them get a response and tend to overpost because they think they have to continually update. But posting too much can be a bad thing when there are too many stories and readers can't keep up with them. That was for you all from the master. Don't do a lot of posting. Take the reviews with a grain of salt.
As Kevin Smith says, I ain't going to get much better than this after reading the first review, and don't read a single one after that.
Yeah. Now, this is the next question I asked her. I did I believe it was top 10 pet peeves, so I just asked her for 3. So if you want Master Seton to hate you forever, this is what you do. This is her top 3 pet peeves. The first pet peeve is realism. I write mostly supernatural stories, but I try to keep it as close to real life as possible. I always ask myself, what would this character be like in real life? How would they react? What would they most likely say, and why? I think putting too much fantasy into a work makes it surreal to readers, and then they think of it as only a fantasy and nothing more. I want readers to come away from my work believing that they were in the story itself, watching the characters up close and seeing the scenes playing out in front of them. The second pet peeve is accuracy. I spend a great deal of my time researching my work before I start writing. And yeah, that's the thing. Please, research your before you start writing. I've read stories where they've had birthdays wrong. They had people's eye color wrong. How hard is it to figure out that John Cena does not have brown eyes? Like, seriously. Okay, back to this.
Tangents.
Historical stories and stories based on current events don't take as much time as character-based angles, such as Randy's psychopathic behaviors in Razorblade Kiss. These same behaviors were within him, but on a hugely subtle level and behind blue eyes. I also spent months researching for the based on real-life Seton work I Won't Tell Him Your Name, which I have since deleted, but plan to repost soon. It was filled with inspiration drawn from interviews with John and Randy, and I even watched Randy Orton's life story several times over just to get the layout of his house as precise as possible for the story. The third pet peeve would be open-mindedness. I like to write stories with angles and couples that readers won't expect. I don't ever want to stereotype characters or write something that they already seen has already been done. One of the biggest problems with writing Bulletproof Skin was that several African American readers believed Alicia's character's behavior was stereotypical and racist. I did attempt to remedy the situation in later postings, but it felt wrong to me because I was inspired to write her in a certain way, and I had already researched the way she spoke in interviews, so my final posting retains much of my original post. Now, for the question 6, we're getting into... Oh, Nick's not here, so there's no need for earmuffs. I was going to say we're getting to the earmuffs part for Nick, but no earmuffs needed. I asked her about researching when she does slash scenes. Do you research when writing your slash love scenes, and what tips do you have on writing intimate scenes between men?
Oh!
Al, are you going to put on Nick's earmuffs?
Patent pending. Heel Turn Podcast earmuffs on.
You're supposed to be better than Nick.
I am.
Don't wear his earmuffs.
I'll bring my own.
Yours, I have a little hole in them so you can still hear a little bit.
Yep.
Here's what she said. I have numerous male friends who are gay. Woo! Gay men rock. And chicks too. Do your thing. And one of them is a wrestling fan. Why aren't more gay men wrestling fans?
I don't know.
Like,
I think it has to do with the whole, a lot of wrestlers, a lot of the ways they get over with the crowd is bullying their opponent.
watch it with the sound off. I mean, I do it. Gay men watch wrestling with the sound off.
And the lights turned down.
And the lights turned down. Maybe a glass of wine.
And candles.
And candles. We're getting real sexy on the Heel Turn podcast this week.
WTF, Sos. WTF.
Okay, back to the questions and answers. I have numerous male friends who are gay, and one of them is a wrestling fan, which is how I drew much of my inspiration for Slash. I've always been very accepting of gay relationships, and writing it comes as natural to me as writing male-female pairings. It is difficult to research love scenes because websites with this kind of content are typically filled with viruses and other issues. So all of the love scenes are creative inspiration and not research, though I'm sometimes inspired by TV shows like Queer as Folk, 6 Feet Under, and True Blood. The only tip I would give is that men regard intimacy different than girls do. I've read a lot of wrestling slash that turned out too fluffy and corny because the guys are being too feminine to each other, and I just don't see them being that way in real life. It also bothers me when intimate scenes appear too random and rushed into, like it just happens without much dialogue or the bonding process. It reads too much like a porn film, and I can't get into these type of stories. Agreed.
Kidney punch. I love you, kidney punch. I love you, chop to the chest. I want your body. Punch in the stomach.
And for the, I guess, next to the last question, because I kind of skipped over the first one. You seem to like torturing John Cena. She does, and it's not just her. There seems to be a thing in the fandom where John Cena is getting tortured, either sexually or physically. He's like having to stay up for days on end and then get beat up. I read a story where he, like, you know, got beat up and left on the side of the road, and they stole all his stuff. And
sounds like the beginning of a porno.
Pretty much it was, but I don't everybody loves to, like, beat up on John Cena, and he's usually a bottom too. Like, he gets everything, that poor guy. But anyway, back to this. You seem to like torturing John Cena in many of your stories. What is it about his character that makes him a prime target? And she says, I don't mean to sound egotistical, but I see a lot of myself in John Cena. He is much more confident person than I am, but there's another side to him that hardly shows through, and much of my inspiration comes from glimpses I've seen of this side, both while watching Raw and when I've seen him in person. When I'm torturing John in my stories, I'm essentially torturing myself through him. The goal is to overcome and rise above the overwhelming odds he is usually faced with, odds that are symbolic of my own personal plights and my desire to assert myself. I just love her. like her answers to these questions is like reading a fan fiction. It's like everything in there. I love her, but yeah, she sees herself in John Cena. I guess maybe that's what a lot of people do. They like see their own tortured souls and then just...
That's the point, because he's the face of the company. You're supposed to project on him. That's what the point is with him being the face of the company. You're supposed to project yourself into him as, I could do that. I could be him. I'd have to struggle for stuff just like he would, but yeah, I'll persevere.
Yeah. Or unless it's one of those stories where he dies at the end.
Then it's an original Clerks ending. Where Dante gets shot.
Yeah, poor Dante. Okay, and I also asked her, because when we did this interview was right after the whole news about Randy's divorce came out, and I asked her if that gave her any plot bunnies. Plot bunnies is basically story ideas. Yeah, can't use the lingo. Big Al's over here looking at me like, what, a plot bunny? What is that? Do we eat it? No, you don't. You don't make.
I'm hungry. Feed me.
We don't make stew out of the plot bunnies.
Why not?
But here was her response. I wasn't aware of the news, and it both shocks me and makes me sad. I really like Orton's DVD of his life story, where it features his wife and daughter, and sometimes I imagine his relationship with Sam, that's the wife, as being very loving. Even in my Seton stories, where Randy also has strong feelings for John, I always consider Sam and John as equals in Randy's mind, and of course his love for Alana outweighs anyone else in his life. Interesting enough, I had been thinking a lot more lately about Sam and Randy for no particular reason, and I did the same thing with John and Liz when I began writing Touching Adam, a story that particularly touches upon John's potential divorce from Liz. I wrote Touching Adam shortly before he announced his real-life plans to separate from her, and some of my readers asked me if I was somehow aware of the divorce would happen before I began writing. I honestly was not aware my fiction would become truth, but I was astonished by my ability to pick up on certain responses from John while watching live events, enough to know that something was wrong, especially his body language responses when Liz appeared on camera with him shortly before John's epic loss to The Rock at the first WrestleMania. I'm also very aware that wrestling fans don't necessarily like top stars being married in real life, and I've gotten heat in the past, mostly through private message, that female readers strongly dislike the idea of John or Randy sharing love for their wives or female roster members as much as their love for each other. It has led me to believe that although I am a person who accepts more than one angle to relationships, and I know it can be done, there are many more people out there who don't accept the dynamic and would rather read stories of intense friction and divorce between real-life couples, perhaps so that the fantasy of same-sex pairing can appear more plausible.
Is that it?
That's well, I went on to ask her one last thing that kind of piggybacks on that. I asked her about, I haven't seen the video because I refused to watch Total Divas and refused to watch anything dealing with Nikki and John and their relationship. I'm doing air quotes, relationship.
Yeah. The theater of the ear really doesn't lend itself to
That's why I told
sign
them.
language.
I told them air quotes. Imagine air quotes, relationship. But I have been forced because my friends seem to like posting GIFs of things from the show, I guess, and I was asking her had she seen them because something seems off. Not hearing what's going on, but just looking at their body language, something seemed off. And because she was talking about John's body language prior to his divorce, we started talking about that. And here's was her response. I haven't seen the clip, but I've seen pictures of Nikki and John together. Honestly, it looks staged to me. I could be wrong, but I looked over about a dozen pictures of the two of them posted online, and all of them look like a couple I'd seen in the movies. There's some chemistry, but there doesn't appear to be any real romance off screen.
Yeah, and plus, Nikki Bella?
Yeah, that's the one. That's his, Bella.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bree having her nip slip Friday or
At
Monday.
least Bree's boobs are real. They
Yeah.
are real. Nikki has the fake boobs, and that's why I tell them apart. John has fake boobs. Daniel Bryan has real boobs.
Well, animal byproducts.
Yeah.
Veganism.
He's like, you can't get boobs because that's not vegan. Fake boobs are not vegan. I gotta ask Brad if that's real but true or not. I'll send him a text.
Oh, we don't. It doesn't matter.
It does to me.
It doesn't matter.
Well, that's the end of. I probably should plug her stuff, huh? That'd probably be good.
Yeah.
That
I'm good. We're good at anything if not plugging other people's stuff.
That kind of sounds dirty. You can find Master Seton's work. I can still call her that. I know her real name, but I won't give it out. At fanfiction.net /u, the letter U, /371070 /Retina, RETINA -not-human. And that's where you can find all of her works, all of her amazing, amazing, amazing stories. Don't steal her stories. He really doesn't like that. You take out a part of her soul. I know how that feels because I've had my soul taken out from people stealing my writing. So please don't do that.
Steal her stories, a large angry man will show up at your door.
You?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. Are we going to totally Jane Silent Bob and start
Yes.
looking at people?
Yes, this has been a very Kevin Smith-heady episode.
This episode brought to you by
Kevin Smith.
That's it.
That's it?
I'm done.
Okay, well, next on the card we have our interview with Cody Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give you the son of one of the founding members of the Click, NWO, and several other factions. I give you the son of Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, Cody Hall. Take it away, Cody.
All right, thank you very much for having me on. It's good to be here talking to you.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear from you. I guess I won't gild the lily anymore. Tell me about your background. What got you started in the business?
Well, I just always saw my dad doing it growing up, so it's always been in the back of my mind, possible career path, so I was finally ready to jump in, and everything's taken off for me. I'm loving it.
Sounds good. Now, who trained you?
My father. His friend's here and there, but he's my pretty much day-to-day guy.
Right on, right on. Out of curiosity, how is your dad doing?
He's doing great. Thank you so much for asking.
Good to hear. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, me too. Very excited.
So what was your first match like, stepping into the ring for the first time?
Looking back on it, I'm not too proud of it. It wasn't, not my best work. I'm sure I'll feel the same way every time I look back in all my matches. But I was excited to go out there and have it. Very ready to get in there and get it done. So it was a good experience.
Like, what other projects do you do other than wrestling?
Right now I don't have too much in my wheelhouse, actually. Wrestling is my primary focus. I wake up, go to the gym, my life revolves around my workouts, and then I just fit matches in when I can. And, I try to maintain a personal life, but really not a lot of side projects, actually.
Now, did you go to school prior to going to learn how to wrestle?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. How's about any good road stories you can tell from like growing up around the business?
I wish I could go on more road trips as a kid, but I still have a few memories. I always loved hanging out with Kevin Pock more than anybody. That's closest to me.
Right.
I've seen how my dad interacts with them. Last time I saw them all together, I think we were working a show for the Insane Clown Posse out in New Mexico. So just hearing them trade stories and chiming in back and forth, I always learned stuff or learn little tricks from being on the road.
Like what sort of tricks?
Something from my dad that I guess he learned from Kurt Hennig. I'm not sure where Kurt learned it, but whenever they hear a song they love, they all put their hands up and rub the headline on top of the roof. And I don't know, it seemed kind of goofy at first, but it's caught my attention. So now every time I'm riding down the road, hear a song, I start rubbing the roof for Kurt.
Any road stories that you yourself have been a part of?
No, I'm not too wild and crazy. I mean, I need to get out there some more. Hopefully I'll have some fun, but nothing I've come across yet.
Have you been witness to or been the victim of any really good ribs?
No, I want to be. I want to be a rib master. I'm always picking everybody's brains about the best ones they saw or, trying to pass them on to me. But, I don't want to mess with people too bad. So I'm always trying to draw the line between being funny and mean. But when I get the chance, I'm going to get something good. You better believe it.
How's your career going so far? I mean, what are you working on as far as matches that are up and coming?
I think my career is going pretty good. I've had 10 matches so far. My last 3 have all been a lot closer together than the first 7. I was kind of having some trouble living down in Florida, finding regular bookings. But since I moved here to Georgia, it's a lot more of an indie scene going on. So that's been helpful for me. As far as what I'm working on, I wouldn't say I have anything in particular. I'm always just trying to find my own character, perfect my moves, my facials. It's really such a total package kind of deal that I can't single anything out.
Now, what do you mean by your faces?
Well, I mean, just when you're selling I just how to convey your character, So much is done
okay.
in your face. Like when you watch movies, you don't have to have a character say a line. You just got to know what he's thinking and know where he's at.
Right. I see what you're saying.
When they see me, so I'm just trying to work on how to tap into that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I just didn't know what you meant. I had an interview with Tim Zabisco a few weeks back, and I was wondering how you liked working with him.
Me and Tim actually never got to wrestle, but he's a great guy. I actually do miss training with him. He was one of my regular lunch buddies. Me and him would go crush this local sushi buffet all the time together.
Nice.
So I hope he's doing good down there. And I've seen one of his matches recently. I think he's coming along good too. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, definitely. I like seeing the younger second-generation guys coming up into the business. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, have you had a chance to work with any of the other second-generation guys around in the indie scene?
No, I don't think I've come across any that I can think of. I think Tim's the only one I know personally. I traded a few texts here and there with Cody Rhodes. I heard he lives real close to the area that I'm at, but he's always on the road, so me and him haven't sat down for lunch or anything yet. But no, nobody else that I know, actually.
Now, as far as, have you had a chance to work with some of the more seasoned talent as far as big names, other than Kevin?
I think everybody I work with is good. All the guys I've wrestled have been better than me, so I don't want to say they're not big names. I do have some matches coming up tagging with Pac and Kev, a little bit more notable guys. I'm excited to work with them, so I'm ready for that.
Definitely nice. Yeah, you can learn a lot from those two.
Yeah, I think being out there could be a whole other world, so it's going to be a landmark for me.
Yeah, I highly recommend, if you can, just keep a road diary of all the things you learn.
You know what? That's actually something I had Steve Austin recommend to me. He said he wished if he would have started his career, just right when he finished his matches, maybe writing a few short sentences, what town he was in, a little bit about the road trip, a little bit about the match. One day looking back, I might have a memoir on my hand, so I think I might start doing that. Yeah,
it sounds like a plan. Now, as far as how's your life outside of the ring?
Going good. I just made a big move from Florida to Georgia. I'm living here in Atlanta now, so I'm still kind of settling into a new area and trying to get everything here up and running. But But I think it's going good. It was a good change for me. I definitely needed to change of scenery right now. So, no complaints. Living the dream, you know?
Right. Are you having any plans of trying to get into the Tennessee territory with Lawler?
I didn't know there was a territory out there, but being so close, I think Georgia touches Tennessee, so I'd love to start branching out and doing the whole southern scene.
I think you'd do well. My friend Nick
reach out to him. I see Jerry every once in a while. Maybe I'll send him a tweet.
Yeah, my friend Nick clued me in on a couple of your matches. You're pretty good.
Thank you. Can you remember which one you saw in particular? I want to see if you're looking at my old stuff or my current stuff.
Honestly, he just pulled it up and just showed me. I didn't see any link or anything.
All right, well, if you don't mind me plugging it, my last match was Cody Hall versus Adrian Hawkins. You know, I still watch that, and I'm not real proud of it, but that's my latest match. That's kind of where I'm at, so go ahead and watch that one if you can.
All right, I will definitely do that. Can your fans get a hold of you on Twitter, on Facebook, and things like that?
Yes, they can. I have a Facebook, but I prefer you follow me on Twitter, and it's at Cody, CODY, _Hall, HALL1. Come and check me out, see what's going on, what my matches are, and follow along.
Sounds cool, man. I mean, I'm glad I got a chance to get a hold of you. Are you doing anything in the next couple of weeks?
I actually have 2 matches this weekend. I'm working Friday for Progression Pro Wrestling, and then the next day, Saturday, for Anarchy Wrestling. So it's going to be my first day of back-to-back shows. I'm excited for that. And I'm actually having bookings coming in pretty consistently now, so I'm trying to keep myself busy every weekend. I'll be out there for you guys to watch.
Nice. Are you keeping up with DDP yoga like your father?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, has Dallas given you any tips and anything?
Dallas has been out of the house a lot since I moved in, actually. He's been on the road a lot working his DDP yoga, plugging it. I'm very happy for him. Congratulations to him. Me and him actually do have plans to get the ring together Thursday for the first time. So I'm excited to pick his brain and see what he's got for me.
I'm trying my hardest to not focus on anybody else except you, but I have to ask, was your house growing up just a revolving door of talent just coming in and out all the time whenever your father was?
You know what? I mean, I've seen a lot of pictures around the house of parties we had when everybody was over, but I don't have a lot of memories of people coming to visit us. I know Pop stayed with us for a couple weekends here and there, but no one was really dropping by on me.
I don't want to keep you from anything else. Is there anything else you would like to plug before I let you go?
You know, nothing burning a hole in my chest. I'm here for you, though. All right, thanks so much for having me.
Yep, you have a good one.
Take care.
Bye. And we're back from our interview with Cody Hall. Be sure to catch him this weekend, both Friday and Saturday, on his shows that he plugged earlier.
Because you just forgot, didn't you?
I did.
Sorry, Cody, but they totally just heard all your plugs, so...
Yeah.
They totally heard your plug.
And now at the top of the card, our main event, we have ourselves a interview with Marcus Buff Bagwell. A lot of people remember him from the 90s and early 2000s as Buff the Stuff Bagwell, 8-time tag team champion for WCW. One time, I thought he could have gone all the way. Unfortunately, things did not go so well for him in the WWE. He'll be touching on that in this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to us now for the Heel Turn podcast is... How many times do you think How many times...
I can hear you real good. Ask that question again, buddy. I'm sorry. Ask again.
We're doing your intro right now.
Okay, cool.
Multiple-time winner of the WCW Tag Team Championships and former WWE star. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Marcus Buff Bagwell. How you doing today, sir?
Who you've got is Marcus Buff Bagwell, that is a 5-time World Tag Team Champion, that has wrestled for TNA, WWF, WWE, WCW, Mega Superstar. That's who you got on the phone today.
I love it, Buff. I love it. Yes, I reckon.
Let's just stick with the facts.
Exactly, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
And I remember you as Buff Daddy Bagwell. That's
Yeah.
how far I go back.
That Buff Daddy stuck on. I don't know how that did, but it did. And Buff Daddy stuck real good. And actually, Scott wanted to name himself something with Daddy. But he had to go with Big Paula Puff because for some reason people started calling me, I guess because of Puff, you know, when Puff was doing the Puff Daddy thing. Buff Daddy it just went wild, so it worked, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching on several pay-per-views and just like, yeah, Big Papa Pump, that's a Puff Daddy thing. What's going on there? I'm sure.
Sure.
I mean, Nick's probably going to be the one to be carrying this interview because I'm a bit too nervous to be talking to you right now, sir. I'm embarrassed.
You're a bit weird?
I'm a bit nervous, sir, because honestly, I was
don't be nervous. Yeah, we're all good. I'm real easy, bro. I just lay it out there, so it's easy for me. So don't be nervous. But the reason that happened that way was because I broke my neck, and when I broke my neck and came back from wrestling, I couldn't wrestle yet, so they made me Scott Steiner's manager. And when they made me Scott Steiner's manager, when I really got over. Really, is when the most over I got, I think. And then when I was able to wrestle again, it just added to my being nervous and realize and let me be entertaining more. The camera was on me 24/7 instead of I had to hit the camera, but I also had to hit the camera about Scotty, because I was his manager. So it was a tough situation. That probably went south.
And yes, your relationship with Scott Steiner, where you was his manager during the Nitro era, to me was classic. You guys cut some awesome promos right in the middle of the ring. And Marcus...
Oh, yeah. We were really good together. We always did.
Oh, yeah, it was great chemistry.
We would figure out the worst thing to talk about that city, and we would do it, and it worked.
I wish I had the sound bites from some of it. I believe you guys were in, Greensville, South Carolina?
It's a lot, for sure.
Marcus, do you really think back when you were in WCW, before they got bought out by the WWE, do you think WCW, in your personal view, dropped the ball with you and could made you into a solid main eventer, potentially being the WCW World Heavyweight Champion? Do you personally think they dropped the ball with you a little bit?
Yes, I do. They had a product that couldn't be messed up. I mean, I look back on old tapes and it gets me. I kept all my stuff anyway, but every once in a while somebody else send me a tape or something. I look back on it and just think, how did they mess this up?
I agree.
It was so good. I don't know how they messed it up, but they did, and it wasn't a total mess up. We were still doing 2.5 ratings. You got to realize TNA don't do a 1.
Right.
And a 1's a big deal. So if we were doing 2 5s, and the Indy basketball playoffs were doing 1 5s. So we were doing a point more than the NBA playoffs every single week.
Yeah.
But the problem happened was AOL merged with Time Warner, and AOL did not like wrestling.
Right.
They wanted rid of it.
Right.
So that's what started the downfall, because really we were still drawing the money, we were still making money, we were still drawing ratings. It's just, they just didn't know what to do,
Marcus, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just saying, wrestling, to them, they didn't want it.
Right, totally agree. Marcus, another question that I want to throw at you. The night that the WWE publicly said that they purchased WCW, what was your emotions like when Vince McMahon appeared and he announced to the world that they bought out WCW? What was your emotion?
I think a lot about that. Because I was there, we had a show in Panama City, Florida, and we woke up, and I woke up with about $15,000 worth of talent. Goldberg, Luger, Steen, everybody, and they were, here we are walking up, and it's Vince
Right.
And we were like, well, what's going on? This can't be good. So when we kind of get a grip on it, they said, hey, there's a meeting in 5 minutes in here. And the Shaman Man said, we're going to keep some of you guys. We're going to fire some of you guys. Good luck. And thanks for your time.
Wow.
I mean, it was a minute long. And me and Lex wasn't on the very first show. So I thought, well, it's over. My career's over. So.
Right.
And they came back and put me and Lex in some kind of, me and Lex were tag champions at the time.
Right.
And they came back and put me and Lex in some interview, and at least we were on the show. So that was big. And then Vince mentioned 5 names in Cleveland, and they did it via satellite. And I on the way home, and my father calls me and says, are you watching me? I said, Dad, I'm just out home for the press. And he said, they just mentioned your name out of one of the 5. You know, and it's Steen, Goldberg, Steiner, somebody else, and me. And I got the second or third biggest pop, which was great back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I just knew I had a job and there was going to be no problems, and it just became hard. I mean, we came into their territory, trying to merge, and all really were, we weren't friends no more. We were competition.
Right.
So I said the boys didn't accept us, you know.
Right.
So it was just a build of tip, and so they ended up just putting on the shelf.
Yeah, I was wondering, how did the existing locker room in the WWF treat you guys coming in?
Oh, it was brutal, dude. Every time I got up one time, and I came back, and my top hat was shoved in. Man, this is how wrestlers are very, very smart, and they're very creative. So they come up again, I go to leave again, like next 30 minutes or something, come back, top hat crushed in. I come back to fix it, how fair it was. Well, the third time I got to go do something, I just crushed my own top hat in.
Wow.
So when I got back, it was fixed.
Wow.
So that's just how the boys are. They're brutal. And that's how it was. It was just a bad situation. It was hard it was like Chevy and Ford, merging, and who's going to be the manager,
Wow. Marcus, I want to ask you, you mentioned this on a recent interview with Fourth and Payne, that supposedly you gave up $150,000 to basically waive your AOL contract and join the WWF?
Yes, I did. My contract was coming up like a couple of months away from when Vince took over, which was the worst time for Vince to take over. It gives me no negotiating power. I've got to make a decision. They know it. And there was about 12 of us like that. Me, Dallas, Booker were the three the biggest stars, but then there was 12 total.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was, your Lugers and your Steens and your Goldbergs, they just sat at home and collected their AOL contracts.
Right.
Because it was legal. Well, mine was close enough, and I had so much heat to the computer, and what people were lying and saying about me is we thought it'd be better just to void my contract, save Vince the money, and show him I'm a team player. So that equaled about $150,000 of me basically saving Vince's money. That's, when you're making money, that's not that big a deal. But $150,000 would save my life right now. But back then it was just to fit in and get a contract, show him I was a team player. 2 weeks later I'm fired. So it was just a bizarre deal. Very bizarre.
Wow.
I could have sat at home, nobody would have saw me, and made another $150,000. Instead I got fired and made nothing.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that whole firing thing. How did the WWE approach you when they decided to release you? Because you premiere on
Jim Ross called me. The facts are, Jim Ross called me and let me off told them they're the facts. There's only 2 witnesses, and I'm one of them. But Jim Ross said, we want you to take off those 3 days, and we got big plans for you on Monday.
Okay.
And I thought, the truth, I thought that was supposed to happen because the way things leaned, and I was Buff Bagwell, and out of Georgia, and that they made me and Booker the first match of the invasion, and all that. But my big surprise was I got released.
I think they.
Like, wow.
I think they dropped the ball with you, man.
So it took me like 10 minutes in the room when they were firing me to realize I was getting fired.
Wow.
So I probably had to ask. I said, are y'all fired? and they still said, no, we're releasing you. I raised my hand like a kid in school and I said, what's this of firing and releasing? And they had an answer for it, bro. It was quick. It was good.
So they really...
They said, if we fire you, we got to redo your contract when we bring you back in 3 months. If we release you, we can keep the contract. We don't got. And I said, it's over. In my mind, I said, it's over. Start shaking hands and start and keep smiling. And that's what I did.
Wow.
I called them back in 3 months because they told me to. And when I called them back, they acted like they knew I was.
Wow.
And you'd think, out of the 3 that you mentioned, when it came to the contracts that were up, was Booker, yourself, and Dallas. You'd think that they'd want you to, as well, because I've seen you work with both Booker and Dallas. You do great with those guys.
Great matches, great chemistry with both those guys. There was two winners that stepped the most were my mom tried to get me out of some shows, which I just told you is not true. And then the other rumor that stuck was me and Booker had a bad match. Well, we did, but you don't fire Buff Bagwell over one bad match. You know, you talk to him, you fix it, and he fixes it, and Buff Bagwell's all like he did for 12 years previous. You know, so when they fired me, I was a kind of sacrificial lamb,
right?
And it straightened the locker room up, and it did wonders for Vince, but it ruined my life, you know. So it ruined my career, let's say. But for Vince, it helped him so much because it made the locker room go, "Hey man, they just fired Buff Bagwell, dude." I'd shut up, you know.
Yeah.
And the locker room cleaned up.
Wow.
Quick. But I was the hit, you know. I had the hit.
Now, when it comes to what you're doing now, do you think you'd ever go back to the WWE for any of their available jobs?
I don't think they wouldn't have me back, I don't think. Yes, I would. I don't think they would ever have me back. I don't think that, to be totally honest with you, I don't think that I would do enough for them to bring me back.
I mean...
Hold on a second. Oh, that's enough. Anyway, yeah, so, I don't think it's worth it for him. I really don't. I mean, he's going to get so much heat from the locker room. Am I going to make that big a difference? It would be cool. It would help the ratings. Absolutely. But is it enough to hear what Vince is going to have to hear for hiring me?
Yeah.
As a boy. And I don't think it is. At TNA, I think it is. I think it's worth it. I think I've got enough friends down there. I think it works. And I think TNA we're talking to. And hoping that they, can come aboard. But, the TNA is more where I fit.
Now, would you be willing to, because you promo like a beast, and some of these guys that they bring up from developmental can't promo out of a paper bag. Would you be willing to do promo, work mic skills with these kids if they approached you about it?
If I had my dream would be to show people how to be a better professional wrestler, but there's just not a job for that.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, I could take every single individual that comes out there and make his interests a little better, make his matches a little better, be a so-called agent or whatever for WWE.
Right.
They allowed me to be. And would love to do that. But, it just hadn't come up. I mean, this is 25 years of knowledge, you know, that's been on TV at the highest point of pro wrestling's ever happening. So, it's pretty good opinion. So, I've got one to tell, and it's just up to them if they want to hear it or not, you know.
Buff, since you mentioned TNA, rumors has it that Eric Bischoff approached you about potentially coming back to TNA. How true are those rumors?
Hey.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I say, how true are the rumors about Eric Bischoff approaching you about coming back to TNA?
They're very true. He's called me, he's texted me, and they're trying to fit me in, but a lot has happened behind stage. They've done a couple firings, a couple people leaving.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure who met.
Okay. If you would, let's say you're back at TNA right now, what would Buff Bagwell do to reintroduce himself back to the wrestling community?
Say again now?
I say, if Buff Bagwell was in TNA right now, what will Buff Bagwell do to reintroduce himself back into the wrestling community? Because you may have some wrestling fans who may not quite know who Buff Bagwell is. They may heard of you, but they may not quite know.
That's exactly right. That's something I got to deal with, and that's where I think I fit in to the H's and Eights better.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I think that you know, they also have you know, they also have the Main Event Mafia, which is good.
Right.
And either one of those I fit into.
Oh,
I go
absolutely.
either way. I think it's a little corny to have Buff Bagwell come back and be a good guy.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I brought the top hat back and was an ace and was a bad guy. That's a big deal. I think that worked. I didn't say it worked.
Now, what are you doing right now as far as your career?
Sorry, buddy.
What are you doing now with your career?
I just independently wrestle and just try to make it happen. You know, try to stay afloat with independent. And TNA would be great for me. But I gotta say, yeah, you know. But I am talking to him, so we'll see.
All right, awesome. And what's your upcoming indie date? So our Heel Turn podcast fans who potentially come out and check you out. What's your upcoming date?
All I gotta do is go to my website. My website's TheRealBuff.com. TheRealBuff.com. It shows everything on there, and it's got my cell phone number and everything. So I'm very in touch with my fans. I stay in touch with them. It's one reason why I stay popular. It's called I care. But yeah, my phone number's right there. Everybody can see and call me and reach out. You know.
Awesome. Marcus, before I let you go, I got to bring this up real quick. There was one storyline back when WCW called themselves trying to reboot themselves. It was a storyline involving you, David Flair, and Miss Hancock, where supposedly David Flair was trying to get your DNA sample to prove whether or not where you are the father of Miss Hancock's baby.
We were doing what now? What were we doing?
I believe David Flair was trying to get your DNA sample to prove that you were like the father.
That was a storyline. That was all that was.
Yeah, I know that was a storyline, but it was probably one of the corniest storylines I've ever heard in my entire life. I want to know who was the genius that came up with it.
I have no idea. I got paid $1 million a year, so I just tell me what to do, I'll do it, and get my paycheck.
Well, very well said.
I have no idea who actually had the sign off to that. That's one reason what the failure that Nitro had was we had too many chiefs, and too many Indians, not enough chiefs. And at Vince's, there's only a couple chiefs.
Now,
and down at TV at Turner, there was 10 bosses. So it became too many Indians.
Now, one last question from me before we let you go. Just right quick. Did you ever consider jumping ship and going to WWE before they bought the company?
I didn't, because they just take care of me good at WCW. They were good to me, and so I just didn't mess with it. They kept me on a contract, and they were good to me, and I enjoyed them, and I thought we were a better product, and so it worked out.
All right. Awesome.
Your fans that have stayed with you for all these years are all glad that you recovered from your car accident and that you're doing well and you're still out there wrestling where people can still see you.
And you are still the stuff, too. I just want to mention
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So my fans, they're sticking with me what now?
Well, all your fans have stuck with you after your car accident and all that.
Yeah, I know, dude. It's a big deal, yep.
Yeah, we are all appreciative of you still sticking with it.
And you are still Buff the Stuff Bagwell.
I appreciate it, man. It was a big deal for me to go through. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. The car wreck was, because I broke my neck again on the same day, 14 years apart. I had to wear a Seton for 8 weeks, broke my jaw, tore my teeth out, broke my nose, 5 plates in my face. It was a mess. But long story short, it turned out good, and I'm still staying busy, and so everything's going good.
Okay, now I read on your Wikipedia page that it said that you were called your wife prior to the accident saying that you were about to have a seizure. I wanted to know if you had a history of seizures.
No, I don't. I quit drinking, and I only drink like 4 beers, but I do probably every day. And I didn't realize this, but that's a lot when it comes to the human body. It can be to certain people, and to me it was. So I quit drinking. I walked in and found a man of your dad, is what happened. And he was a heavy drinker. And so I said, I'm going to quit drinking, because I don't want that happening to me. He's telling us a house hit his head. He died of a brain hemorrhage. I don't want that to happen to me. So my drinking wasn't out of control. I knew that withdrawals could happen, but not after 3 or 4 beers, no big deal. Well, sure enough, it did happen, and I had a seizure, and I was on the phone with my wife, and she was pull over, so I pulled over, and cranked my car back up, and didn't even know, was totally blacked out through the whole thing.
Man.
Don't remember cranking it, don't remember driving my stick shift, big jacked up white key. Don't remember cranking it, putting it in reverse, backing out. Don't remember any of that. Knocked over 2 or 3 mailboxes, drove around, and finally towed my car.
Wow.
Don't know any of it.
Well, it's a blessing that you walked out of it alive, Marcus. It really is.
Yeah, it's a blessing I was alive, period. That's all there is.
And we're back from our interview with Marcus Buff Bagwell. Thanks a lot, Buff, Cody, and Master Seton for all of your interview and input. We appreciate you very much, and we would love to hear you all again. Now, I guess it's time for us to...
Yeah, no book it for this week. The
book it guy just booked it.
Yeah. The book it is for Nick to show up next week.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's book that.
Yeah, he had some family issues.
He had a family emergency to attend to, so we hope everything goes okay. From what I hear,
everything's going great.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think we're going to be heading into a cool down period as far as our interviews go.
We got a lot of stuff going on personally, and it's really hard to, with all the schedules, to get something.
Yeah. As much as I like doing interviews, and I like talking and learning about parts of the business I did not know about behind the scenes. It's just, it's hard to find time in the week to do things.
You're like, can you do an interview between 4:03 and 4:17? like we really, the time just really is not there right now. So
yeah, we're yeah. But hopefully, coming up, we will be getting back into it.